Hi, my name is Layton. I'm an intuitive and a mystic. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about somatic release. And this is something I honestly have not spoken much about. And that's because I think a lot of people in the somatic community, including practitioners, really emphasize the idea of a cathartic emotional release. And they kind of market that as if it's somatic release. And while real, genuine somatic release can be very cathartic, it can bring forward a lot of emotions. What ends up happening is that the client or the person that is looking to have this release, they end up becoming oftentimes very addicted to these emotional responses. And they can misunderstand or really be misled to believe that a cathartic emotional response automatically is a somatic release, when that's simply not the case. So a somatic release is essentially the release of trauma that is stored in your nervous system as tension or as pain. And it can be there from, the moment of conception, truly. Or not necessarily the moment of conception. The trauma can be there, but as far as the tension in your body, as soon as your fascia is formed, as soon as your muscles are formed, you have the potential to start racking up all this trauma and all of this tension and pain within the body. So it is really important to release this. But we want to do this in a way that is very gentle. And I'm not going to be giving any somatic release exercises in this. And the reason why is because I want to invite you to build a relationship, to enter into a communion with your own body and feel into what you are led to do with your body. And I do have in my current course, Overcoming the Lower Doppelgänger, I have a 12-minute guided somatic meditation that's a body scan, and it kind of teaches you how to do that. I'm considering if I can find a way to condense it into 3 to 5 minutes, just to kind of give you the idea of what to do. It's not going to necessarily be as extensive or as helpful, but I have had people ask if I could do that. So I may do that if I can find a way to condense it. That being said, what I am going to do is explain what I experienced in my most recent somatic release. And I do have other videos actually on my YouTube channel. I know that I have at least one of these up where I'm talking about somatic release and what to expect during a somatic release. And I kind of walk you through what I had experienced the night before. So the somatic release that I'm going to explain right now, today is Wednesday, I believe. Yes, Wednesday. And I had this on Saturday night. So it's still very fresh in my memory. And I think that when we hear other people's experiences, it can really help us when we're kind of trying to figure out how to navigate this. And it's not one size fits all. So even if you follow my example of what I did, it does not mean you're going to have the same result. And that is why we can't just say, hey, do this exercise and that's going to bring you a somatic release. It might. And we can technically make suggestions about things that might lead us to that place. But ultimately, those suggestions should be coupled with the knowledge that this is about a relationship with your body, and it's about what your body kind of leads you into from that space. So on Saturday, I had an experience prior to the somatic release that was very emotionally healing for me and very emotionally powerful. So I had a lot of energy kind of moving around in my body because of this experience. And I was laying in bed and I start feeling this restlessness in my body and this like twitching in my arms and legs. and I was annoyed. I'm thinking, I'm so exhausted. My wife and I, we had just driven back. It was like a 3-hour car ride from seeing my parents, and I was tired. And I had driven most of the way, and I was like, why is this happening right now? I just want to sleep. But I know better than to ignore these feelings when they come up, because they're messages. These little twitches and this sensation of restlessness, it was telling me something. So at first I tried to stay in bed while I was doing this. And I kind of immediately went into my gentle somatic release exercises. And I emphasize gentle because I do think that if you are going to kind of intentionally enter the space where you want to release something, it needs to be gentle. Don't traumatize your body more. I cannot even tell you how many somatic retreats exist where they essentially take people in that are very vulnerable and that are hurting and that don't really understand anything about somatics. They haven't been trained in this work. They have not been trained in the nervous system or in neurobiology. They don't understand fascia, all of this stuff. So they are blindly entering, and they're just believing the people that are leading the retreat. And these people, they know that if they can kind of trigger you to have this massive cathartic emotional release, that you will think, you will equate that to healing, and you will continue giving them your money and continue going back, despite the fact that it is often traumatic. It re-traumatizes the body to do such extreme exercises seeking that kind of really intense emotional release. So what happens is, if we want to enter into a genuine relationship with this, we have to make the body feel safe. So often when you're first entering into this and you've never had a somatic release before, what you want to expect going into it is something very, very minimal. You want to expect maybe some very light shaking, maybe some tremors. Your teeth might start chattering. You may cry a little bit, but not very much. And sometimes you may not have a release at all in your first experience, and instead you may just feel this overwhelming sensation kind of just taking over your body as you become very aware of the heaviness in your body and become very aware of these different sensations. And that's completely okay, because we have to earn the body's trust, and it takes time to get to the point to where we can release things to the level of what I am going to explain about my experience. So some of my more gentle exercises involve things like I'll kind of be laying down in my bed, and I'm laying on my side. And in this particular case, what I did is I started kind of gently shaking one of my legs while I was laying on my side. And that was because I was already feeling this activation within my nervous system, and I could tell there was something that wanted to come up. And so while I'm doing this, I'm really entering consciously into my body, into the sensation. And I'm thinking, what am I feeling right now? What does my body need? What does it want me to do? So if you start doing a certain exercise for your body and it's not scratching that itch, and you still feel like, I don't feel like this is doing anything, I feel like there's something else I need to be doing, that is an invitation to try and communicate with your body. And again, this takes time. So if you go into this the first time and you're like, my body is not saying anything to me, I've been there before too. And that's completely okay. It really is. You don't want to shame yourself. You don't want to guilt yourself and feel like a bad person or like you're doing something wrong because of it. In fact, what you should really do is say to your body, thank you so much for letting me know that this wasn't enough, what I was doing. And if you don't yet feel safe to communicate more with me, that's okay. You didn't do anything wrong. It's okay that this is all that happened. And then you just come back to it at a later date, and you kind of continue that until this relationship is built. So many people, they want things to happen like that. They want to enter into it. And I get it. I've been there before too. When you've been in pain and you've been in suffering for so long, and you just really want to kind of be done with it. You want to shed it all. You want to shake off all the trauma. And so it can be very appealing to see these workshops that people will attend where they do claim that you can, release like 50% of your trauma or tension or something. And that is not true. That's not how it works. And really, you are at huge risk of re-traumatizing the body. So we really want to take this slow. So I'm noticing, this shaking, this is not enough. And I'm like, what does my body want to do? Well, I'm feeling like I want to kick. I want to be kicking the air. I want to use this force to kind of get this energy out. And I'm feeling this in my arms too. And at this point, I'm thinking, okay, I have my wife asleep. Not going to be doing this in bed. She's going to be like, what is going on? So I got up and I just start kicking, and I'm just kicking the air. I probably looked ridiculous. You probably will look ridiculous. And honestly, when I tell you the other things I did, it's probably going to sound even more ridiculous. But when you're in that state, you need to be as playful as possible. We can't take ourselves too seriously, because if we do, we're just going to clench up and we're not going to allow the process to happen. And we should really keep in mind that when we are somatically processing these different things, the body may have the urge to do something that it never had the ability to do before. So for example, if you have ever been attacked by someone, and when you were attacked, you had no way of defending yourself. Maybe your arms were completely like disabled or crossed, and you couldn't grab the person, or you couldn't hit them, or maybe you couldn't kick them away, or whatever it may be. Even if you were in an instance where in your childhood you were constantly told that you couldn't talk back, or you couldn't express your emotions, or you couldn't cry, what happens is the tension of holding back those tears, the tension of holding back your words, the tension of not being able to physically fight back and express when someone was attacking you, that remains unexpressed within the body. And it's something that you may feel come up. And definitely the deeper that you go into this work, the more likely it will be that that you will start expressing things more so in that way. So I also just want to say, you really don't need to be reading into it and trying to figure out right away why you're feeling different things. It may come to you. You may instantly know why you are doing something. You may know where it is coming from. But if you don't, it could totally derail you to try and intellectualize it and think, this is weird. Right now, I feel like I need to kick. What am I kicking away? Or right now, I feel like I need to jump. What am I jumping away from? Or what am I running away from? Once we invite the mind into it, we can really detach and dissociate ourselves from our experience. So we want to avoid doing that to the best of our ability. So while I was in this experience, I was as embodied as I possibly could be, really just trying to listen to what my body said and then instantly react. There wasn't really anything else going on in my mind. It's actually an extremely meditative act. And I will say that if you do things that are very meditative, for me, I don't necessarily love ironing my clothes, but I do love how meditative it is. And so when I'm in that state, I'm not doing anything else. I'm just focusing on that. And there's something very satisfying about it. Or washing the dishes is another one. Or vacuuming, when you're vacuuming, if you have a carpet and it kind of like can make those lines and it's like a Zen garden. If you can hold your attention on just one thing that you're doing, at any point throughout the day and really practice that and build up that ability, that will help you tremendously in making this connection with your body and in doing this work. Because you need the mind to be clear. And especially because if you are in a state of any trauma being triggered up, it can trigger your nervous system. And when it triggers your nervous system, you may kind of drop into the lower nervous system. And then you can have all kinds of intrusive thoughts come up that are really tied to like thought forms and egregores that we've attached to our trauma over time. So that being said, I'm kicking and I'm punching and I start feeling like I need to jump in the air. And I'm thinking, this is gonna wake my wife up and she's gonna be like, why is the floor of our apartment shaking? But I was like, I just need to do this. This is what my body wants me to do. So I'm jumping as high as I can, and then I'm getting down to the ground, kind of in this like almost animal pose. And when I do that, I start feeling like my body wants to crawl around on the floor. And then I want to do a back bend, and then I want to jump again, and then I'm like rolling. I probably looked ridiculous, honestly. But there's something that is so powerful about letting your body do this, because we have to understand, you can't look at it as like, oh, I'm this grown adult in my 30s, like I am, or wherever you may be, and I'm like doing these ridiculous things. You have to realize I am releasing tension from when I was an infant, from when I was a toddler, from when I was 11 years old, from when I was 14 years old. And we have to understand that the body during those times, it moves in different ways. We interact with the world in a different way. And so often this is kind of what helps us reverse and unwind that, by allowing our bodies to actually express this. And I definitely found this to be true in this experience, because I kind of ended by, after doing this for, who knows how long, I kind of ended by laying on my back, and I had my arms over my head. And I was feeling like I needed to do kind of like this backstroke motion. And this really, it's the more that you do this, because in the beginning you might think, oh, I don't know, for some reason I feel like I need to do this, and I don't know why I feel like I need to do this. And the mind is definitely a lot more involved in the beginning. That's normal. But the more that you do this, it becomes so fast and so intuitive that you are really not even thinking twice about it. And so it's just like, okay, I'm not really thinking, I'm just moving the way my body wants me to move. So I'm doing this kind of backstroke motion while I'm laying down, and I kind of grasp my hands above my head a certain way and start just pushing them backwards. And I had the craziest release in my shoulders, and I'm very hypermobile. So my shoulder, it was mainly my left shoulder. It was actually dislocating multiple times. I don't want to scare anyone, okay? If you are not super hypermobile, that probably will not happen to you. But you don't really have control over what's happening in the moment, because your body is unwinding. My fascia was unwinding. And I will say there were aspects to it that were painful, but it also felt so good. Like you could feel the release that was happening. And honestly, the most painful part was the fact that I had all of this tension in my back that was kind of tied to my shoulders. And I was releasing it from my shoulders, but not from my back when this was happening. And so my back was, my back muscle was working so much, attempting to stabilize my shoulders, really. And it was intense. And so just a side note about that, when you have a really intense fascia release like this, when you are having a somatic release where your body is shaking uncontrollably, or you can literally feel your muscles unwinding, and there's this tremoring, and you may have some sort of physical response that you just can't control. It uses a lot of muscle power it really can strain the nervous system. And this does not mean that it's a bad thing, but depending on the level of release you have, the next day or the next few days, you can be very sore. It may feel like you just had leg day at the gym, or it may feel like you did a really intensive hike, something like that. The more extreme of a release you have, the more it's going to take your body to recover. And so quite honestly, it can take anywhere from a few days to a few weeks. And after Saturday, when I had this somatic release, which I have not finished, expressing it, I actually had flu-like symptoms basically until yesterday. And even today, I was so exhausted. I honestly stayed in bed almost the entire day, which is not like me at all. In fact, I have to be very intentional about taking breaks and allowing myself to rest, because that's not something that comes very naturally to me. And so that's something that I have to make sure and check in with myself. Did I allow myself to rest? Did I allow myself to take a break? So today I knew that yesterday I had pushed myself a bit too hard and I was not resting enough. And I really needed to allow myself to recover more. So I needed to take in a lot of fluids, a lot of electrolytes, and I needed to just stay put and let my body recover. Because after I had had that release in my shoulders, I then start feeling this tension in my throat. And what's happening is my throat is doing this motion like it wants me to open my mouth and cry like a baby. That infant cry that, literally, if you type out wah, it basically sounds like that. And I just want to be really clear. You do not have to, if this happens to you, you don't have to actually make the sound if people are around or if you don't want to. I didn't make the sound. What I did is I put my throat in the exact position, and I was constricting and contracting my muscles as if I was doing that. So I was kind of silently doing it. And I had a memory of infancy. And that's the furthest back that I have ever gone in my somatic release journey. I have never had an experience before where I was, connected to my infancy. And quite honestly, the majority of my trauma was in my childhood and teen years and then early adult years. So I didn't really think about infancy very often, but I did have a traumatic experience right after I was born. And my immune system was not good, and I was sick and had to stay away from my mom for a little bit because of that. And I was having these memories come up. It was really profound. And so I did cry, but it was not the tears. They did not feel like anything. And this is really common actually with somatic release. And this is what makes it very different than just having some sort of cathartic emotional release, is so often you're just releasing what's stored in the body. So you aren't necessarily going to be reliving the event in a way that is very emotional. It's going to be very, very physical, very embodied. So I was crying over this event that had happened, and I was reliving the physical experience in the sense that I was actually expressing it and I was getting it out of my system. And I had the way that I had processed that in the moment was that when I was crying at certain times, I didn't have anyone there to comfort me and to meet my need. And it reminded me of something that my family had said a lot, which was that, after I came home and when I was very young, I didn't really cry. And so I think that as an infant, I learned, when I express that I need someone, no one's there for me. And I had really internalized that in my entire body from such a young age. And so the way that I handled that was to wrap my arms around myself in that moment while I was having this release. And I just had tears streaming down my face. And I was essentially letting my nervous system know and letting my body know, if you need something and you want to express it, you're safe to express it now. And I'm going to listen to you. And I'm going to do my best to meet your need. And I'm going to be there for you. And you don't have to worry about crying and nobody hearing you. You don't have to worry about being left alone, because I will never leave you alone. And I had this really beautiful experience with myself and with my nervous system in that moment. It felt incredibly profound. And all of this came from just listening to my body and listening to the prompts and taking the prompts of my body seriously. Because again, it's so easy for us to judge this and think, well, that's stupid. Why do you want to do that? I mean, think of how often we even need to drink water or go to the bathroom, or we need to get up and do something and we just don't do it because, no, I'm busy working right now. So I'm just going to finish this thought and then I can get up and go to the bathroom. Or, I'm tired. It's the middle of the night. I don't want to get up and get a drink of water. Or anything. We do this all the time without even thinking about it. And every time we do this, we are sending a message to the body that your needs, they can be ignored. They don't matter that much. These other things can be prioritized over them. And so then the body doesn't want to express things. Or maybe you're having a conversation with someone and this person is making you feel uncomfortable and you don't want to be there, but you also don't want to be rude and you don't want to hurt their feelings, or you don't want to be confrontational. And so you ignore how your body feels and you ignore your own boundaries. These are the things that cause the body to start shoving down these sensations, shoving down this pain, and it doesn't want to continue to communicate with us if we're not going to listen. And so instead, what could be coming through as sensations, as boundaries, as prompts, it instead becomes very internalized, and it can really only process itself through deep physical pain, through disease, through sickness, through an attack on the immune system. And I can say from personal experience that these things are very difficult to undo. If you have ignored every instinct in your body your entire life, you can't be on a healing path for a short period of time doing these somatic releases and rebuilding this and expecting everything in the past to be undone. You can heal tremendously in a very short period of time. However, there's gonna be more, and there's gonna be more if you have spent so much time kind of creating this environment where you don't listen to the body and you don't take these instincts seriously. And it takes time for the body to really start to trust us again. So that being said, somatic release, it's not only powerful in emotional healing and in physical healing, but it's also really powerful in our spiritual healing. A lot of the time, somatic release can actually release entity attachments, kind of like what I was saying earlier, how when you drop into the lower nervous system, you can have these intrusive thoughts come up, and they're really thought forms and egregores that we have kind of created. So for example, if you were in a very traumatic car accident as a child and it was a red car that hit you, you could have this thought form that makes you feel like red cars are unsafe. And every time you have to get in a red car, or every time you see a red car, you associate it with that experience. And you think, I don't feel safe. Even if it's not a conscious thought, you may see it, and unconsciously, all of a sudden you feel anxious, you feel dissociated, and you don't even know what's going on. This happens to people all the time. And it is a form of an entity. It does take on a mind of its own, and it does control us to a certain extent. So We feed entities when we are in this place of pain and trauma, and that's because they attach through this wound. So the more that we clear up these wounds, the more that we release what is linking us to them, the more we are also releasing these entity attachments and these thought forms and these egregores. And that also has to do with if something is like an ancestral attachment, this can also release that. It can help us clear our karma. Because we're healing that trauma, and you can somatically release things that aren't even necessarily from this life. You can somatically release something that has remained in your body, because the body is how we access the Akashic records. It's all in there. And so something can remain in your body and be making you so sick because you have not had healing in that area yet. So this can also be really beneficial there and help that tremendously. And this also, when we're doing somatic release, when we're building this relationship with the body, when we're healing our trauma, we're really clearing out as much as we can of the lower centers, and we're transmuting that pain and we're turning it into something beautiful, kind of like how I had that traumatic experience from infancy come up. And I turned around and I used it to validate my nervous system, to comfort my inner child, to make myself feel safe. And when we do that, we're redeeming the entire situation. And that helps us in releasing the lower doppelganger, and it helps us in our etherization, because we can be more present within the heart, and we're not locked in the lower centers as much anymore. So it really helps us in so many different ways. And yeah, I think I'm like just checking my notes, and I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to say about it. I didn't want this video to be too long, but I do think that somatic release is very important. And after I had that experience, I just thought, this is really powerful and more people need to know about it. So this can be something where you literally just get into a meditative state, you do a body scan, and you kind of wait to see what stands out for you. Are you experiencing any twitching? Are you experiencing any discomfort? Are you experiencing any pain or any tension? And then you want to consciously kind of go into that body part. You want to try and develop a relationship with it. Try and ask it what it wants to express. And if you don't get an answer, then just allow that sensation to build and build and build until it kind of takes over. And sometimes that's all it needs. Sometimes the release will be just letting a sensation be there without ignoring it, without shoving it down, without medicating it. And then it can kind of naturally leave the body that way. So that is what I wanted to say about somatic release today. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments and I'll do my best to answer. And if there's anything that I didn't cover in this video about somatic release that you would like me to cover in the future, also let me know that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And if you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Have a good one.